Hello there, World of Tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, World of Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be breaking into all of the changes that are coming into the game. There are a lot of balance changes planned, and in my previous video addressing the balance changes, not all of the vehicles were being rebalanced yet. But now we have the rest of the tanks, like the tank destroyers that Wargaming has left out. So in today's video, we are going to be going over all the changes. I'll be sharing my opinions on these changes, whether I agree or disagree with them, and you can let me know in the comments down below what you think as well. As I said, there are quite a few to break into, so this will be a decently long video, but I think that this is going to obviously be good for everybody that is watching it. So starting off at the top, we have the Houri. Now, the Houri is a super dangerous tank in general. It has crazy good penetration values, especially after the calibrated shells changes. It has pretty troll frontal armor. It has reactive. It has good mobility, crazy good reverse speed. In general, the Houri is one of the strongest tier 10 tank destroyers. The vehicle is getting better shell velocity, which is actually quite nice. I do think the shell velocity on the Houri is kind of wonky. 850 meters a second is not good. It's not awful, but it's definitely not good. So getting about a 10-ish% buff is going to be quite nice. And as we can see, each round is going up by about 100 meters of shell velocity. The vehicle is gaining about a half a second on the reload, which is also quite good. It's going to increase its DPM. It's losing more traverse speed, and it is also getting worse on movement dispersion. So it's getting more DPM, better shell velocity, but worse traverse speed and on movement dispersion. Honestly, I think that's fine. I don't think the DPM needs to get better, but it is only half a second. It's not that big of a DPM difference, especially judging that you're a tank destroyer. You're not going to rely on the DPM. You are going to rely on the accuracy and the damage output. Losing that traverse speed is going to make the vehicle a lot harder to deal with mediums, to deal with light tanks, and especially judging that this is a big box, that's going to be the case. So I'm actually quite glad that Wargaming is doing these changes to the Houri, and I think in general that's going to make it much more fun to play. The Type 71 is getting some big buffs. The reload time is getting slightly worse, but it doesn't matter because look at the premium shell damage. It's going from what was 360 to 400. That's crazy. So basically you can just fire gold all day in this tank and only have a 20 damage drop off from the standard. That's only 60, 70 damage per minute less than what you'd normally be sitting at with AP ammo. And also, the tank is getting a big ol' pen buff. We can see that the standard is going from 255 to 300. Well, it's not really getting a pen buff because the vehicle already got a pen buff, but it is still getting slightly more pen as we can see. Like it's going from 255 to 257, 330 to 335. And that's crazy because it has AP premium. Like, this is going to be the highest pen heavy. It's going to have ridiculously good gold pen with alpha. And it's got armor, it's got mobility. The Type 71 is easily going to be one of the best heavies in the game. I would highly recommend to get your hands on it if you don't have it already, because it is just crazy good. The STB1 reload time is going from 6.71 seconds to 7.09, so it's losing a bit of DPM, which is good. It needs less DPM, so I'm glad that it is shaving about 0.4 seconds off the reload. The shell speed is getting a decent nerf, but not enough, in my opinion. I mean, not enough to really make a big effect. It's going from 1,500 meters a second and 1,200 to 1,200 meters and 1,100. But that's really not a huge change. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, the STB is getting a big nerf. Not really. I mean, yeah, you'll notice the shell velocity, but 1,200 meters a second is still really quick, and it means that you'll be able to hit the majority of shots at distance. It's really just going to be your accuracy that lets you down at that point. The power to weight is getting slightly worse, and its top speed is getting slightly better. In general, the STB is getting a tiny nerf, and it is going to be a ridiculously strong tank still. 11 degrees of gun depression paired with the armor it features, at the end of the day, it's still going to be crazy good. Because any tank that has 11 degrees of gun depression, solid DPM, crazy good pen, and barely losing any alpha on the premium, it's just not going to hurt the tank that much. So I don't really think the STB is going to change. I think it's going to be just as strong as it currently is. So if you have it and you were thinking, gee, I'm not going to play it anymore, I don't think that's the case. I would continue to play and mess around with the vehicle. The Jagdpanzer E100 is losing hit points, which is a bit disappointing. I think that it actually should have gained hit points, but it's losing a bit of hit points, as we can see, going from 2,150 to 2,000. Its aiming time is getting slightly worse, going from 4.9 to 5.3. The reload time is also getting slightly worse, going from 17.83 to 18.31. However, there is one buff, and that is the armor. The armor is going from 270 millimeters to 280 millimeters flat on the superstructure. And what that means is that angled, because it is, at a slight gradient, it's actually going to be more like 285, 290 mils. It's actually going to be quite strong. Medium tanks loading premium ammo are not going to be able to cut through the Jagdpanzer superstructure. Heavy tanks will struggle. So I don't think that this is a buff overall to the tank. I think losing the DPM... I mean, the DPM change isn't a huge change, because it has 800 alpha, and it has tungsten, so you don't really rely on the damage per minute. But the aiming time will affect the vehicle, and losing 150 hit points is a bit disappointing. But at least the YAG is getting a bit of armor, meaning that you will get more bounces, especially when using gun depression. So I'm not too mad about that. Plus, losing aiming time and DPM means that it'll be easier to deal with when it has shot. The E100 has a lot of changes going to it, as we can see. So let's take a look. First of all, the pen, 4 less on the standard. Who cares? Not that much of a change. The 152mm alpha is going from 680 to 660. Okay. The on-movement dispersion is going from 0.1 to 0.12. Okay. So, in general, it looks like the gun's just getting flat nerfs. But that's not too big of a deal to me, because I think that 680 alpha was too high. I do think that it should get a slight DPM buff, though, if Wargaming wants to make the rest of the values worse as well. But yeah, the 152 is getting slight nerfs all around. The 128mm is getting big buffs. It's going from a 12.46 second reload to a 10.55 second reload. That is a 2-second reload buff. That's huge. If we make our way to the 100 very quickly, I actually want to take a look at what the DPM is currently. I think it's only like 2200 on the tank right now, bruh. Got a bunch of useless things here. Alright, so let's take a look. We go to tier 10, E100. So if we take a look at the E100, right now, the vehicle has 2,468 DPM with calibrated shells. So if we take 2 seconds off of the reload, that means you're going to be sitting at a 9-second reload. So if we pull out my calculator here, and we do, 60 divided by 9, and then we multiply that by 460 damage per shot, it's going to be a lot of DPM. I don't know if it's going to be sitting at exactly 3,000, but the point being, the tank's going to have a lot of DPM for a 128mm. It's also gaining some standard pen, which is quite nice, going from 250 to 256. However, it doesn't look like the premium pen's getting a buff, which is a bit disappointing, judging that the premium penetration on the 128mm is quite trash, as we can see, 311mm. Even with calibrated shells, the premium pen is only going to be sitting at around 326mm, which is pretty awful when you think about it. I mean, that's really, really bad. So there are downsides to the 128, which the 150 isn't going to have. Pen is a big one, and not only that, but alpha damage is a big one. But you are going to have a huge DPM increase, and it's going to be a lot closer to the mouse in that style. So I don't know which gun I'm going to mess around with, but I'm actually really happy that Wargaming is giving us 2 options. It's really lame that they haven't done this in the past, especially because people like me, I've been egging them on for years. So I'm really happy that this is finally happening. The aiming time is also getting quite a bit better on the gun, as we can see, going from 5.9 seconds to 4.8. That is a 1.1 second aiming time buff. That's huge. Penetration is going from 250 to 256, which is quite nice. However, as I said, the premium pen's still pretty mid. Power to weight is getting better, and the traverse speed's getting worse, but the values are such minimal changes on the power to weight and traverse that they're basically going to even each other out. The E50M is getting about a half a second reload buff, which is nice. Means the DPM is going to go up for some reason. The shelf speed is getting nerfed. It's going from 1478 to 1100. But again, as I mentioned for the STB, I don't think that's a huge change because the DPM is still going to be really good. The accuracy is still really good. And the shell velocity of 1100 is still very good in general. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about that. The premium shell velocity, now that is pretty bad. 840 meters a second. That's a 300 meter a second drop off from the normal heat. That's going to be noticeable. And you will definitely see certain circumstances when shooting heat across distance that it might take a bit of time to travel. So I do think that it's going to hurt the heat shells a bit, but again, 800 meters is still enough for most situations. The standard is still going to be really quick, so in general, I can't say it's that big of a deal, especially because the vehicle's getting reactive armor. Yeah, that's going to be really cringe. The armor is also getting buffed all around on the sides. 105 millimeters goes to 114 on the edge of the turret. 102 millimeters goes to 111 on the flat sides. The spaced armor is going from 5.2 millimeters to 8. And the lower half is going from 87 to 102. That means that the E50M is literally going to have stronger side armor than the majority of tier 10 heavies. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. So this vehicle is going to be an absolute beast. The upper plate, this turret is already crazy good. So the fact that this tank's going to have reactive, it's getting more DPM, all at the only downside being a little bit less shell velocity, the E50M is easily going to be the strongest medium, probably in tier 10, if not one of the strongest, and it's already one of the strongest. So I would highly recommend to get your hands on the E50M. It's going to be insane. The Leopard 1 reload time is getting a nerf, going from 6.23 to 6.71. I'm personally a little bit disappointed. I think that it shouldn't get nerfed into DPM. Its hit points are going from 1800 to 1750. The power to weight's getting 1 worse. The rotation speed is getting 5 degrees worse. It's losing a degree of gun depression. Its max reverse speed is getting 2 better. So a bunch of nerfs, all for 2 degrees of reverse speed so far. It's getting gear oil and adaptive concealment. So what do I think about these changes? I personally don't love them. I don't care about gear oil. I mean, sure, the tank's going to be able to reverse at 29 kilometers per hour with 1 gear oil, which is crazy. And even though the power to weight's getting a little bit worse and the traverse getting a little bit worse, it's not going to really matter because you're going to be running gear oil and improved fuel. So in terms of power to weight and all that, it's not going to matter. They are nerfing the DPM, though, which is a bit disappointing. Its hit points are going down a little bit. But adaptive concealment is going to be a huge buff because it's going to allow the tank to kind of play like a sniper, which is what it's meant to play like. I think that's what Wargaming was really trying to hit home here, is that the Leopard is meant to be a sniper tank. It's not meant to be a frontline medium. But losing a degree of gun depression is uncalled for, in my opinion. I think if they had done all the other changes and not touched the gun depression, I wouldn't have been as mad. But come on, 7 degrees on a medium that has no armor really doesn't make sense to me. It should have at least 8 degrees. It should be at 9. But I'm very disappointed in the gun depression nerfs. Overall, I think the Leopard should just stay the way it currently is, but Wargaming does what Wargaming wants. The VK72 is going to be losing 4 millimeters of standard pen, 4 millimeters of premium pen, and 4 millimeters of high explosive. Not that big of a change, though, because remember, calibrated shells buffed all these values, so it's not that big of a deal. Reload time on the vehicle is getting a second worse, so it will be losing about maybe 100 effective DPM. And the gun is getting better on movement dispersion. So while it's getting a bit worse DPM, it is going to be able to snap shells better. So yeah, the VK is still going to be really strong. Plus it's getting PBR and a legendary camo, which looks sick. So I'm very excited to see what the VK72 is going to be able to do. In general, it's a really, really good tank as it is. I don't think it's going to be hurt that much. I heard the armor was getting changed, but I don't see any changes listed about the armor here, so we're not going to say the armor is getting changed as of yet. Either way, the VK72 is going to be really good. So I don't think it's going to be hurt as bad as people were thinking it was originally. It's still going to have tungsten. It's still going to be really strong. The aiming time on the VK90 is getting better, actually. A little surprising. The turret traverse is getting a little bit worse, which doesn't matter too much. You are German super heavy after all. And the on-movement dispersion is getting a big nerf, going from 0.08 to 0.11. This is really going to suck because the vehicle also features combat stabilization, which obviously allows the vehicle when you're sitting still to have much better accuracy. But it means that when this vehicle drives over 15 kilometers per hour, it's going to really bloom now. But if you're driving under, it's not going to make too much of a difference. In general, the VK90 is still going to be really strong. It just seems like Wargaming's making it slightly more punishing for snapping your shells on the move, which is fine with me, so I can't get too mad about that. It's still having its crazy good armor, still having its good accuracy. In general, the VK90 is still going to be a beast. Grille 15 is obviously a vehicle that a lot of us want to see buffs. And these buffs are really lame, I'm going to be honest. I mean, it's getting better traverse speed, which is nice. The Grille's traverse speed kind of sucks. 40 degrees a second is going to allow it to finally feel mobile rather than So I'm excited for the Grille 15's traverse speed. The DPM is getting slightly better, but nothing that's going to be real noticeable in a game. The power-to-weight ratio is getting slightly better. Again, doesn't really matter. It's a tank destroyer that you're going to be sitting in the back of the map, but for the majority of the gameplay. And it's getting a 3 km/h speed buff. Buffs we didn't need for 500, Alex. Yeah, the Grille 15, as I made my original video talking about the balance changes, should have an alpha increase. It should have a DPM nerf. It should have an accuracy buff. And these things would allow it to be much stronger. It should have more gun depression over the front, allowing it to be much more capable. It has plenty of room for the gun depression. Wargaming just doesn't give it. So there's a lot of things that could change on the Grille. I'm kind of disappointed with Wargaming's decision making. I mean, the tank's not going to be bad. It's just not going to change from its current state, which is, I guess, right? We have the mouse, and the mouse is getting a slight DPM nerf, or buff, actually. Sorry, my brain died there. But yeah, a slight DPM buff. Not too much of a change there. And the on-movement dispersion is getting a slight nerf. So the mouse will still be really inaccurate on the move, and it'll have like 50 more DPM, 40 more DPM. In general, the mouse is still going to do mouse things. It's going to have a lot of hit points. It's going to be able to push. It's going to be able to use its decent DPM to bleed out its opponents, and your gun's going to miss the majority of shots you fire. I personally would like to have seen a buff on the mouse's turret armor, on the upper plate, on the side armor, due to the way Wargaming changed calibrated shells. I would have liked to have seen the gun get a bit more accurate, and maybe, or as I said in my other video, instead of accuracy, a increase of alpha. There's a lot of things that Wargaming could have done for the mouse, and I think that this is just a cop-out, so, oh well. A little bit disappointing, but at the end of the day, there's not much I can say about it. At least they're not doing anything stupid, right? Let's take a look at the European nation changes. We have the Stritzvon K. It's a losing power-to-weight ratio. This is really disappointing. The vehicle already had a power-to-weight nerf, so the fact they're nerfing it even more sucks. Not only that, but its aiming time is getting worse. Its traverse speed isn't really changing, and the penetration is the only buff, going 3 millimeters more on the standard and 5 millimeters more on the premium. These are not enough buffs to counteract the nerfs. The Stritzvon is supposed to be a mobile heavy. It's supposed to be a heavium. It's not a very strong performing vehicle as it is, and the fact that Wargaming's nerfing it is incredibly stupid if you ask me, and dim-witted. I don't understand why they're doing this. It makes very little sense. If I were to balance the Stritzvon K, I would leave the power to weight the way it is. I would buff its penetration to about 320 millimeters on the premium. Standard can stay the way it is, and I would give it better aiming time, not worse. But Wargaming's doing the complete opposite, so that's really disappointing. I probably won't be driving the Stritzvon K anymore after these changes do occur, but I guess we'll have to see how the power to weight feels and the aiming time. But I can't believe they're nerfing the aiming time as well. That's so stupid, bruh. The Renault is getting a dispersion nerf, which is really disappointing. As every YouTuber said, the Rhino is one of the best performing tier 10s in the game in fun. It's not an overpowered tank, it's a really well-balanced vehicle. So it's very disappointing to see Wargaming nerfing the dispersion. Now with refined gun and everything else, it's not that big of a deal, but just why? Why do you need to change this tank? It's well-balanced, and you're still changing it. Really annoying. It's getting an additional 50 hit points, which I guess is nice, but not too much of a change there. The Rhino will still be fun. It will still be good. It's just disappointing to see them changing it when it doesn't need changes. The CS63 is going from 6.9 seconds to 6.42. That is a half a second reload buff on the vehicle. Its power to weight ratio is getting better by about 1. Its dispersion is getting better. Its max speed is getting better. Its traverse is getting slightly worse, which who cares? And it's getting adaptive concealment. I think that the CS63 is actually going to be quite strong. The DPM increase is going to allow it to be comparable with other mediums. The dispersion buff is going to allow it to be fairly accurate. Again, comparable to other mediums. The top speed buff, especially with gear oil, is going to allow it to accelerate and achieve really good top speeds. And adaptive concealment is going to allow it to perform well in the majority of situations. While I personally don't think that every tank needs adaptive concealment, I'm not going to sit here and shun it. I think that the CS is actually going to be a proper medium after the changes that occur here. So if you wanted to grind the vehicle, now might be your chance to actually mess around with it. The Progetto is getting a lot of nerfs, and I'm really disappointed about this because I really love the Progetto, and it's very disappointing to see what's happening to it. First of all, its top speed is going from 58 to 56. Its gun depression is going from 9 degrees to 8 degrees. The reload on the first shell is going from 7.67 to 8.63. The reload on the second shell is going from 5.75 to 6.71, and on the third shell, it's staying the same. So you have the same DPM on your third shell, which is technically your first shell. So it's the shell that you have when you shoot once and then you reload. It's the 7.6 second reload is the one where you dump the whole clip and then you're shooting on single shot. So your DPM is getting worse overall because if you dump into the clip, you're losing DPM now, which is really disappointing. It was the last reverse auto reloader where you gained DPM when dumping the clip, and that's what made the Progetto really unique. Wargaming took that away, and I'm quite disappointed, to be honest. So that's really sad. It's getting a lot of hit points, though. It's going from 1800 to 1900, running a hit point buff, which you should. It's going to be sitting at almost 2000 HP. That's kind of crazy for a medium if you think about it. Its dispersion is also getting better, which is nice. It's going from 0.355 to 0.345, and it's getting combat stabilization. I'm not sure how I feel about that. This tank really doesn't need combat stabilization. All it needs is like 0.326 dispersion, and it'll be good. But yeah, for some reason, Wargaming's giving it that, which is kind of a cheap move, if you ask me. In general, I don't think the Progetto is going to be bad, but I think that they're taking away a lot of the fun the vehicle originally had. I think if they leave the Progetto the way it currently is, give it a slight dispersion buff, it'll be fine. But we'll see how it plays. I don't think it's going to be bad. I just don't really personally love the way they're deciding to balance the vehicle. The Kranvagn is an incredibly strong heavy, which they're doing a lot of changes to. First of all, it's getting a big pen nerf. It's going from 253 on the standard to 250. And this is APCR, so it's not getting those big Cali buffs. The penetration on the premium is going from 330 to 310. That's a huge nerf. It's a huge nerf. Right now, it's like 370 mils of premium. It's going to be at like 350 next update. To be honest, I think that's good. I don't think the Kranvagn deserves 370 mils of heat pen for a vehicle that has literally impossible turret armor to cut through. So I think that it should have some downsides, and that's fine with me. So the pen is getting it's getting a big nerf on the premium. The HE is staying the same. Reload time on your shell number 1 is going from 12.73 to 13.71. Shell 2 is going from 8.81 to 9.79, and shell 3 is going from 7.83 to 6.85. So they're buffing its DPM, but they're also making it worse. The way it's working is if you dump the clip, you're hemorrhaging DPM. But if you shoot it on single shot, you'll have fairly effective DPM. It's getting about a 1.2 second DPM buff on shell number 1. And I actually want to take a look at what the Kranvgn's current reload is. Obviously, with crew skills and equipment and everything. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I don't even know what I clicked on. But with crew skills... Oh, bruh. Okay, thank you, Wargaming. Either way, let's make our way over to the Kranvgn. And let's take a look at the reload time on the shell. So currently it's 7.5. And as we said for the changes, it's going from 7.8 to 6.8. So it's going to be like 6.5 next update. So if we pull out our calculator and we do 6.5, now you do have to add on the intraclip, which if I'm not mistaken is 3 seconds. Wait, let me double check. I saw shells in magazine. Yes, it is 3 seconds. So it's 9.5 seconds for 400 damage per shot. So if we do 60 divided by 9.5 and then multiply that by 400, the Kranvgn will be sitting at 2,526 effective DPM on single shot. That's quite good, actually. That's quite good. And it means that when you are hull down holding, you're going to be able to shoot the vehicle or your opponents quite nicely, actually. But if you dump the clip, you're going to be losing a lot of DPM. This is fine with me. You know, I've made many videos in the past saying how busted the Kron is, and it really is busted. Actually, it's getting even more DPM, because I just noticed taking a look at shell reload, it's getting a faster dumping time, going from 3 seconds to 2.73. So that's another 0.3 seconds off the reload. So actually, the DPM is going to be closer to 2600 on single shot. That's really good. Like, that's actually really solid DPM. So, yeah, I actually can't say the Kron's getting all too much of a nerf here. It's only going to hurt people that don't understand how it works and they dump the clip. The damage per shot is also getting a slight increase, going from 400 to 410. The HE is getting a 15 damage increase. In general, Kron's getting a buff, if you ask me. Like, yes, for uneducated players, the Kron's getting a nerf. But for people that know how to use it hull down, it's going to be real dangerous. The fact that it's able to dump faster, the fact that it's gaining DPM on single shot quite a bit and a little bit of damage per shot, in general, is just going to allow this tank to be really, really scary. The only big nerf here is the penetration, but that's fine with me. The armor didn't change, and because of that, the Kron is still going to be ridiculously good. So I don't think there's much to complain about. I actually like what Wargaming's doing to the Kron. The Mil 2 penetration of the standard shells is going from 250 to 248. Oh no, boo-hoo, who cares? Shell velocity is actually getting a big buff, going from 1000 to 1120, 840 to 900. Those are big buffs. So the Mil 2, I really like it, and it's going to be quite nice to see these buffs coming to it. So yeah, not too much of a change, but it'll be nice to mess around with. The 60 TP Lewandiskigo, I don't know how to pronounce it. Somebody will let me know, but I don't know how to pronounce it. The traverse speed is getting slightly worse, 2 degrees a second. Not enough to really affect it. The reverse speed is getting a 1 degree nerf, not enough to affect it with gear oil. The power to weight ratio is getting 0.2 better. I mean, oh boy. And the penetration of the premium ammo is going to 320, which means that you're going to be able to cut through more, which is nice. Right now, the premium pen on the 60 TP is pretty mediocre. It's like 356, yeah. So it'll be more like 362 millimeters next update, something around that ballpark. That'll be quite nice, and that's actually going to allow the vehicle to feel a lot more comfortable. So I'm excited to see what happens to the 60 TP. VZ55, I just read that, and my brain just went, wow, I did not expect to see that. The VZ55 autoloading gun is going to have 2 shells. It's going to get an autoloader. That's really, really cool. I don't know what the DPM is going to be. Oh, actually, I do know what the DPM is going to be. It's going to be a 17.7 second reload time. I'm not going to worry about the DPM right now. All we're going to do is talk about the gun itself. It seems like Wargaming actually listened to what I had to say about the balance changes. I mean, obviously Wargaming isn't on the friendliest of terms with me right now, but we'll see what happens in the future. Point being, it actually looks like they may have listened to me a little bit on the changes of the VZ55. It's getting an autoloader. First of all, its top speed's getting buffed, which is nice. The alpha damage is getting 10 less. Oh no. The reload time is obviously getting a big nerf because it's getting an autoloader. Penetration is getting slightly worse on the standard and premium, but it's still really good pen, so that's not too much to worry about. On-movement dispersion is getting a little bit worse, but it's getting an autoloader, and it's got a 4-second interclip. So that means in 4 seconds, this tank is going to be able to deal 920 damage. That's really good. And when you pair that with the fact this vehicle has really good armor, it has really solid mobility, and decent gun depression and everything else, in general, the VZ is going to be a beast. People have been waiting since the vehicle was released to get this autoloader, and the fact that they're finally giving it, to me, good job on Wargaming. It's rare for me to say that, so good job. I think they actually did a proper job there. The Carro 45 is having quite a few changes here. It's getting gear oil, it's getting gunpowder. Gunpowder, who cares? Gear oil, it'll be nice, especially because the vehicle's power to weight is right now. So getting an additional buff to its power to weight and top speed will be nice. The reload on shell 1 is staying the same. Reload on shell 2 is getting worse. Reload on shell 3 is getting worse. And reload on shell 4 is staying the same. So essentially, you're going to still have the same 2,850 damage per minute if you're shooting the vehicle once and reloading. But if you eat into the clip, you are going to lose a bit more DPM. If you ask me, not that big of a deal. I think the Carro should get punished for dumping its clip. It is way too strong of a vehicle for the damage output it's able to have. The penetration of the gold shells are getting worse. Bit disappointing because I really like the premium pen. It's losing a degree of gun depression. Honestly, not too much of a big deal for me. It's gaining 50 hit points and it's getting gear oil, as I said. So overall, the Carro is getting nerfed. I mean, that's a fact here. But it's a really strong vehicle, and the things that define it are still going to define it. The Carro is still going to be able to deal 1,200 damage in, 9-ish seconds or whatever. It's still going to be a really, really scary vehicle. It's still going to have troll armor, and it's getting a little bit of hit points, plus it's gaining mobility. So I think the Carro is still going to be really good. The accuracy, nothing changed in that area. So yeah, it'll be great. I have no complaints about the Carro changes. The Minotauro is getting the same reload on the first shell. It's getting better on the second, and better... Oh, wow. The Minnow is actually getting a big DPM buff. That's surprising. It is losing a bit of alpha, going from 490 to 470, but it's still gaining DPM. So if we take a look, it's an 8.63 second reload. So if we go over to our Italian TD... and we take a look at the Minnow, it's currently 9.05. So with an 8.63 to 9.5, it's having a second taken off the reload. So if we take a second off of 9.05, and we also add the intraclips, so let's do that real quick. So let's pull out my calculator. So 9.05 will be 8 seconds. We'll just do it at 8 seconds. So we'll do 60, and then let me do 8.05 plus 3.54. So it's going to be 11.59. So 60 divided by 11.6 multiplied by 470. The Minnow is going to have 2,431 effective damage per minute. And it currently has 2,336. So it is gaining DPM on the standard. And it's gaining DPM on the second shell as well. So yeah, it's getting more damage per minute, which is nice. And with a less alpha, it means that it's also going to be less punishing to get shot by the vehicle. Not a huge amount less. I mean, getting shot for 470 is still a pretty chunky alpha. But it's nice that it is getting a nerf on alpha and a DPM buff. I am not mad about that at all. What? Oh my god. Okay, now that's stupid. Shell reload boost? What am I reading here? It's an auto reloader that's getting shell reload boost. So that means that the Minnow is going to be able to dump its whole clip in like 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds. That's crazy, bruh. That's crazy. Okay, I don't know exactly how good. I mean, to be honest, shell reload boost on this tank isn't going to be that good because you have to remember that your last shell is 23 seconds. But the fact that you can deal 1,500 damage in 4 seconds is a little stupid. You can literally roll up to a vehicle in front of you that has 1,500 health and go in 4 seconds and it'll be dead. That's kind of crazy. It's also getting an armor nerf, which is good. Thank God. It seems like Wargaming once again has actually listened to me and the community on what needs to happen to the Minnow. The lower plate on this tank was too strong. It needed a weak spot on the lower plate. And the fact that Wargaming's taking 50 millimeters off of it is really good. I'm glad. I'm actually not mad at these changes so far today. The original changes that Wargaming proposed were really trash. But these changes are actually decent. Good job. I'm actually surprised. So I'm happy about the Minnow. I mean, I'm not grateful that it's getting shell reload boost. But, I mean, if you dump your reserve shell, you're still going to be punished. Reload time on the 120mm for the Semovente Contra Carro 64 is getting about a second worse. The damage by module is also getting worse, which is good. If any of you remember, a couple months back, I made a video on the vehicle and Amarak 3 people in a row. That should not be allowed. And it's because the fact the module damage was the same as 150mm. The armor is also getting worse. 20mm less on the flat upper plate. The lower plate's getting 30mm less, and the sides are getting 20mm less. A lot of people were talking about how the Vipera, it's just a worse SMV Contra Carro. It's not. Because as I mentioned in my Vipera video, Wargaming was planning on nerfing this tank. And lo and behold, I stand corrected and true on the fact. I don't stand corrected, I stand correct on the fact that Wargaming is indeed nerfing the tech tree. So I'm glad they're nerfing it. I think the tech tree is way too strong. People that are bummed, honestly, they shouldn't be. It's way too good in the current state. So we move over to Russia. What do we have going on here? Reload time of the IS-4 is getting better, 9.97 seconds to 9.59. So a slight DPM buff. It's going to be sitting at just shy of 3,000 DPM next update. Hit points are going up by 50. Its max speed is going up by 2. The power to weight ratio is going up by like 7, 8, and the armor is going up by about 10 millimeters on the upper plate. Now I looked at the effective armor, it's not great. It's like 250 on the upper plate, so it's not that good effective, but it will be good enough if you're using a little bit of gun depression to force people to load premium ammo, meaning that you are going to make it further with the hit points that you feature. And with the mobility increase and with the DPM increase, the IS-4 is actually going to be a really strong vehicle next update, so I'm quite excited to see how it's going to play. I think already the vehicle is okay, so the buffs will definitely make it something decent. The T-22 medium is going from a 6.2 second reload to a 6 second reload, so a slight DPM buff. Power to weight ratio is getting better. The vehicle's getting tungsten, which I've talked about in the past, a little crazy, but it's losing a huge chunk of dispersion going from 3.26 to 3.55. It's also losing a bit of shell velocity, which is pretty mid. The vehicle already had mediocre shell velocity, so losing another 100 is going to be really annoying, and it's getting a big nerf on its on-movement dispersion. However, it's getting big buffs too. The upper plate is getting 8 millimeters stronger. The lower plate is getting 10 millimeters stronger. The sides are getting 7 millimeters stronger. And this little tiny bar here is getting 10 mil stronger. So overall, the T-22 is getting big armor buffs. It's getting a big DPM buff. It's getting tungsten. Essentially, they're turning this thing into a frickin' brawler. And it's going to be a beast at that. I think the T-22 is going to be pushing the limits next update. I mean, really the only nerfs here are dispersion, which, oh no. Oh wait, I just ran refined gun, and the shell speed, but it's only a 10% nerf. If it really sucked that much, you can just put on supercharger. But I think the T-22 is going to be a little bit nutty next update. The Object 263 is an incredibly dangerous tank. It features stupid levels of DPM, really good mobility, and solid armor. And because of that, I am excited to see what Wargaming does to it. So traverse speed is getting worse, which is okay. I mean, I think tank destroyers do turn too fast currently, so I'm happy to see that they are nerfing some of the traverse speeds. The shell speed is getting worse, a little disappointing. It's getting 1 more degree of gun arc, which will be nice. That'll allow the vehicle to, aim left and right 1 more degree nicer. That's quite good. Oh, it's getting AP standard, thank God. Alright, that's really nice. The APCR standard sucked on the 263. The fact that Wargaming is giving it AP standard is going to allow the vehicle to actually feel solid. Alright, overall, 263 changes look good. It's also getting a slight increase on its aiming time, which is also going to be solid, meaning that I can run refined gun, get the benefits of the dispersion, and not have to worry about my aiming time. So, overall, no complaints about the 263. Good job there. The Object 268 version 4 is getting 5 mils extra pen. Whoa! There's not much to say. I mean, personally, I would have liked to have seen the 268 version 4 superstructure get buffed, and I would have also have liked to have seen a DPM buff with an alpha nerf. Maybe an accuracy buff as well. I talked about all that in my what I would do balance changes video. Obviously, Wargaming did not take that path, but it's one of the only vehicles they really didn't change, so it's nice to see something staying the same. The Object 260 is getting worse dispersion, which is very interesting. I did not expect that. The turret traverse is getting much worse. Reload time is getting slightly better, and it's getting combat stabilization. So in general, the 260 is getting a nerf. It's getting worse dispersion, worse traverse on its turret. Its DPM is only getting slightly better. I don't understand it. I mean, the dispersion nerf isn't that big, but I don't even get why they're giving it a dispersion nerf to begin with. If anything, it should have gotten a buff. And it's also getting combat stabilization, which shouldn't be on a vehicle that reverses at 20. So I'm not the biggest fan of the 260 changes. I don't think they're going to ruin the tank, but I also just don't even understand them to begin with. Somebody can let me know in the comments what they think. IS-8 is losing 10 mils of standard pen, 20 mils of premium pen. Why? Why are we nerfing this vehicle? I mean, sure, it had ridiculously good pen, and with Kali it'll still have really good pen, but I don't get why they keep nerfing the IS-8. It's already gotten a lot of nerfs to it in the past. But you know what? It has tungsten, it has good mobility. Even though it's only, I think, 42 now, it is still decently mobile. I would like to see an armor buff on the tank, though, personally. However, it's a tier 9, and it's still a decent tank, so I'm not going to hate on it too much. 320 mils with Callion is like 350 plus, 360-ish effective, actually, so it'll be fine. The Object 140 is getting 10 more damage per shot. Its penetration is getting 4 more on the standard, 8 more on the premium. Its dispersion is finally getting the buff that it deserves. Its aiming time is staying the same, and its reload time is getting a little worse. Overall, the DPM's only going to go down by maybe like 60, 70, because it's gaining alpha as well. You have to remember that, so that's going to even out the DPM change. The pen is going to be really nice, and the dispersion is going to be crazy good. I mean, the 140 has needed good dispersion for a while because it's supposed to be this super accurate, agile tank. And for some reason, Wargaming kind of never gave it that. So I'm actually really happy with the 140 changes. While it's not what I would want for the tank, it's going to allow its playstyle that Wargaming's catering to it to be a lot better. So that's good. The Object 268 is getting another dispersion buff, which is crazy because it's already super accurate for the alpha damage it features. Its pen is getting worse, but who cares? I mean, you're still going to have over 300 millimeters effective with Callion, so it doesn't matter. And the traverse speed is getting worse. Again, good. Tank destroyers need worse traverse speed. Overall, I could care less about the 268 changes. Doesn't seem like these are going to affect it too much. The traverse speed's a nerf, while the dispersion's a buff. The IS-7 is going to be getting less pen on the standard. Its top speed is getting 2 worse, and same for the reverse. Its reload is getting slightly better, though, which is going to give it even more effective DPM. Its lower plate's also getting worse, which is good, actually. I think the lower plate is a little bit too strong. The fact that some standard shells, like if you're driving a 113, which has a PCR standard, or a Cron, you can actually struggle to pen the lower plate of an IS-7, which can be a little goofy. So Wargaming nerfing it just that slight bit is going to allow tier 10s to cut through it quite easy. And it's going to make it so you're going to have to hide that lower plate more, which is fair, because the IS-7 has such good upper plate armor. It has no hatches. It has really good side armor. In general, I think these changes are justified, and I'm not going to get too mad about them. T-62A is losing 0.4 seconds on the reload. Why? I don't know. Its shell speed is getting absolutely nuked, and all it's getting is improved engine power boost. Wow. Wargaming demolished the 62A. I don't even get it. So they took away a big chunk of its DPM. They took away a massive chunk of its shell velocity, and all they gave it was improved engine power boost. I do not agree with those changes at all. I think the 62A should have stayed the way it was currently, and it would have been completely fine. Wow. Yeah, don't play the 62A next update, guys. What the heck? I don't even know what to say. T-100 LT, reload time is going from 6.4 to 6, so it's getting a DPM buff. The penetration is getting 5 better, okay? So it's going to have more pen, which is nice. Power to weight is getting better, and its dispersion is getting slightly worse. Overall, these are big buffs. Running Refined Gun on the T-100 LT is still going to allow it to be incredibly accurate, less than 0.3 dispersion, and with the increase of DPM, with the increase of pen, with the increase of power to weight, it's going to allow it to be much more mobile, much more dangerous when you get behind opponents. And that's exactly what you want to do with the T-100. It's the little rat that just drives around the map, punishes you, and leaves. So yeah, I think that these are good buffs for the vehicle. No complaints there. Object 907 is going to be getting better power to weight, more view range. It's slightly worse on reload time, and its traverse speed is getting worse. Overall, not really any big changes here. Yeah, I mean, the 907 is going to play just like it did before. These are such minute changes that it's not going to affect it that much. The Object 777 looks like the aiming time is going to be going from 4.1 to 4.5 seconds, which is mediocre, nothing crazy. The reload time is getting slightly better, which means it's going to have over 3,000 effective DPM, and its terrain crossing capacity is getting slightly better on hard terrain, but that doesn't make much of a difference. It's medium terrain and soft terrain that really matters. We can see it's getting slightly better on soft terrain as well. So overall, the changes to the 777, not much. I mean, they're kind of like the 907. These are very small differences here and there that really won't make that noticeable of a change when you're messing around with the tank. We have the AMX M449. Its reload time is getting substantially better. It's going from 11.41 to 11.1, so it's going to gain probably about 50-ish DPM. it's getting reactive armor, and its upper plate is getting 10 millimeters stronger. So yeah, Wargaming's just giving the AMX M4 huge buffs. I mean, this vehicle is going to be a beast. It's going to have 2,900 hit points paired with frickin' reactive and 2,700 DPM with more armor. Like, what the heck? The AMX M4, you know, I know a lot of people like crying and complaining about the fact that it lost the alpha and attack accuracy sucked and it doesn't have the AP premium anymore, but trust me, the AMX M4 is going to be ridiculous next update. The FCM 50 ton is going to be getting better reload, quite a substantial buff there, about 0.8 seconds. It's getting sandbags and improved engine power boost. The FCM might actually be strong next update. Like, it's already decent. I remember Wargaming buffed it a couple months back, and I played like 2 games in it. It was alright. And now that Wargaming's buffing it again, it might actually start to become a really strong vehicle. To be fair, it's still a big, ugly box, and you won't see me driving it. But it is getting some substantial buffs here, which are going to allow it to be quite good. So we'll have to see how that actually ends up working out. The AMX 30B is getting Spall Liner. Why? I don't know. I personally won't be running Spall Liner on it. I don't ever get high explosive penned in the 30B. It's getting reticle calibration. That I might run on it. It's getting a power to weight nerf and a reload time nerf. So they're just nerfing the tank, really. The 30B, as many people will agree, especially skilled players, is currently in the best state it's ever been. It's an incredibly well-balanced vehicle and really only benefits skilled players. So the fact that Wargaming is nerfing the reload by 60-70 DPM, they're nerfing the power to weight, and they're giving it 2 useless consumables is really disappointing. I'm actually incredibly disappointed. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's not, you know, if Wargaming nerfed all the DPM on mediums, it would be understandable. But what we're seeing here is every other medium's getting a DPM buff. The CS63, the T-22, the E50M, all getting DPM buffs, and this tank's getting a DPM nerf. Doesn't really make sense if you ask me. Really disappointing there. The AMX 50B is getting an aiming time nerf, which is funny because they went from buffing the aiming time over and over and over to nerfing it, and the pen on the HE is getting slightly better. Apart from that, not too much of a change. This is fine with me. The 50B is reactive armor. It shouldn't have reactive. If they just removed reactive, the tank would be fine. But I'm glad to see they're making it a little bit more punishing for just YOLOing out in the open. At least you're going to have to spend a teeny bit longer to aim. Now, the Foch is a vehicle that I have eagerly been awaiting the changes for. Because the Foch is a vehicle that Flossie and I will both agree is pretty mid right now. And hopefully, I haven't read these changes yet, by the way. Everything I'm reading, I am learning at the same time you are, which is good. It means that we're kind of getting, you know, the same reactions. So, the 155mm Mod 2, I don't know which one's which. I think the Mod 2 is the auto reloader, because obviously it was the second gun added to the vehicle, but let's double check very briefly. It doesn't hurt to double check. So let's make our way over to France, over to the Foch, and of course we have more adverts. Thank you, Wargaming. Okay, so yes, the Mod 2 is indeed the autoloader, which is what I thought it was. So the alpha damage, oh, finally, it's getting an alpha buff. It's going to be 560. That means with tungsten, which is going to be like an additional 80 damage per shot, that's going to be a lot of alpha. That's going to be upwards of 640 DPS. That means with tungsten on, you can deal over 1,200, almost 1,300 damage with the double shotgun. That's crazy good, and it's going to allow the Foch 155 autoloader to be crazy. The single shot is going from 600 to 620. So that also is going to be really, really good. The reverse speed is getting a big buff, going from 13 to 15. And judging that the vehicle already has gear oil, that means it's going to be reversing at 19 base with gear oil. So I will remove my second gear oil that I'm running on the tank. Terrain crossing capacity is getting way better on standard, which is good. It's getting way better on soft terrain as well, so that's also really good. The reload time is getting slightly worse on the autoloader, but that's understandable. I mean, it's getting a big alpha increase, so I'm not going to complain about that. It's getting better traverse speed, which it needs. I'm good, happy about that. The power to weight, oh, what a nerf though, holy! The power weight's going from 20.9 to 14. Wow, that's going to suck. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to run gear oil and improve fuel to make this thing's power to weight come back. That really sucks. I don't know why Wargaming's doing that. I would have been fine with like 16 or 17 power to weight. 14, that's like T-110E3 levels of power to weight, bro. Hopefully with gear oil and with improved fuel, it'll have better, maybe 17, 18. But man, this tank is not going to be that quick on acceleration anymore. It's getting a big view range buff. It's also getting an armor buff. 180 mils goes to 200 on the upper plate. Judging that the upper plate's already like 330, 340 effective on flat, that means with 20 more millimeters of armor, this tank is literally going to have like 400 millimeters of effective armor on the upper plate, which is crazy. But to balance this, Wargaming has nerfed the lower plate by 30 millimeters, which is a big nerf. The hatch is getting a huge buff, going from 200 to 245 on the lower half and 180 to 200 on the upper half. So in general, the Foch is becoming a beast. It's getting ridiculously good armor at the expense of mobility. Personally, I think that these are good changes. While the power to weight is getting nerfed substantially, it still does feature super speed boost. It still features a lot of engine power boosting abilities, which are going to allow it to accelerate up to speed. And the alpha damage and the traverse speed buffs are going to allow it to be really good. And even though the power to weight was nerfed, it did get better terrain crossing capacity. So in general, I think these are big buffs for the Foch, especially that upper plate buff, so I'm actually quite excited to see how it plays. The Batchat T-125 ton is another vehicle I've really been awaiting the changes of, because it's quite an overpowered tank in its current state, and I'm excited to see if Wargaming nerfs it enough. So what do we have going on? Well, first of all, the reload time is getting worse. Okay, good. The on-movement dispersion is getting nuked. It's going from 0.1 to 0.16. Standard is going from 1 AP to APCR. The 100 millimeter is getting better on movement dispersion. The aim time on the 100 millimeter is getting a buff. The reload time between shells on the 100 millimeter is getting a buff. So are we actually, you know, looking at the changes here, it looks like the 100 millimeter might actually be a better option. You know, you look at it, Wargaming is nuking the crap out of the 100 and 5 millimeter. Its DPM's getting worse. Its on movement's getting nuked. And at the same time, the 100 millimeter is getting better on movement dispersion. The aiming time is getting better. The reload time is getting better. It's already got really good DPM. Okay, well, I might have to try the 100 millimeter. Thankfully, the view range is getting nerfed by 20 millimeters, which it needs. The view range on the Batchat is way too good right now. And the armor is getting worse by 10 millimeters on the upper plate, which I'm also glad about. I hate the upper plate on the Batchat. I think it's incredibly cringe because of the fact it just gets random bounces. So a 183 will now be able to overmatch the upper plate. In fact, 152 millimeters will as well. So you will no longer have to worry with your high alpha tank destroyers about bouncing on the upper plate of a Batchat if you have a 152 millimeter and above. So I'm completely fine with these changes. This is what needed to happen to the tank. I know there's going to be people that are bummed. I am not one of them. The tank needed nerfs. We have the WZ-132-1. It is getting worse pen on the standard, 2 worse on the premium, 5 worse on the HE. Overall, the changes to the pen aren't that big. The on-movement dispersion is getting slightly worse, but not a huge change. The view range is getting 10 meters more, which is going to allow it to be right there next to the Batchat in terms of view range. The reload time is getting half a second better. Judging that the vehicle already has solid DPM, this is going to allow it to be really good in terms of DPM. And its reverse speed is getting 4 better. Pair that with gear oil, that's another 4 better. So this thing's going to be able to reverse at 28. It's going to have adaptive concealment, really solid DPM. Honestly, the 132-1 might be the best light tank in Tier 10 after the changes. This thing is going to be a beast. I am really excited to see what exactly happens to the tank, so I guess we'll have to find out, but it's going to be real scary. The 113 is going to have a slight nerf to the power to weight, but it's gaining 100 hit points. So I guess that's something, right? It's not a nerf. It's not really a massive buff either. The 113 will basically play the way it did before. The 121 is gaining, let's see, well, reload time is getting worse. The turret rotation speed is getting worse. The power to weight's getting better, and it's getting reactive. I mean, reactive will be nice, but it already has tungsten and adrenaline, so with the third consumable, I'm not going to be running reactive. You'll see me running tungsten and adrenaline. The reload time getting nerfed is fine with me. I think its DPM is a little too high for the alpha it has. The turret reverse doesn't matter, and the power to weight's going to allow it to be a little bit better. So in general, tank's going to be still really good, so no complaints there. Ooh, the 5A. What is Wargaming doing to my baby? Its HP is going up by 50. Oh boy. It's on movement, or it's not on movement. Its base dispersion is getting better by about 0.01. Its power to weight is getting worse, and its traverse speed is getting better. So it's basically getting a teeny buff, but not much. Really disappointing there. I was hoping the 5A would get better aiming time, or maybe better armor, but no, unfortunate. Oh well. At least the 5A didn't get nerfed. The 113 GFT engine power is getting 100 worse. That's going to make it a lot slower. Its DPM is getting a little worse, but nothing that's really going to affect it. Its traverse speed, however, oh my god, 8 degrees a second. That's a huge nerf to the vehicle. That's really going to stop it from being able to make these stupid aggressive plays and traverse out of situation. It's gaining 10 damage per shot, though, for some reason, and it's losing reactive. That's all good. Losing reactive, thank God. The fact that it's losing a massive chunk of traverse, thank God. Yeah, honestly, Wargaming did a good job nerfing the 113. They kept the armor the way it was, and they nerfed the things that needed to be nerfed. So good job, Wargaming. I actually applaud you. The Type 59 hit points are going up by 70. The reload time is getting quite a bit better by about 0.5 seconds. It's getting adaptive concealment. I actually made a video on the Type 59. I don't remember if I posted it yet, but I did make a video on it. This vehicle is going to be a beast. It's going to be really, really fun to mess around with due to the changes. And not only that, but it's getting a 12mm buff on the upper plate, and the sides are getting a 7mm buff. Like, the Type 59 is actually going to be really, really strong next update. It's going to be the only tank in Tier 8 with adaptive concealment, which is going to be really good. The 114 SP2 is going from 175mm to 185 on the edge of the turret, which is really nice. It means that it's, especially with the angling, going to be like 25mm more effective. And the flat part of the turret is also getting a 10mm buff. It's going to be 300 base now, meaning that if you're using slight gun depression, it'll be upwards of 340 to 350. And that's good. So overall, the 114 SP2 is getting some big buffs in terms of the turret armor, which it needs. The turret armor is really trash right now, especially with the Cali changes. So I personally would still have loved to have seen a dispersion buff for the vehicle, an accuracy buff, but it's better than nothing. That's what I'll say. The 121B is getting more hit points and a better power to weight, and its turret is getting 12mm better on the cheeks and 10mm better on the upper plate. Overall, it's going to make this a better T-62A. We saw the 62A doesn't really have any changes going to it, so this vehicle is just going to be a much better T-62A with the increase of hit points, and the fact that its power to weight is also getting better. Sorry, I'm coughing a little bit. What do we have for Britain? Well, starting off, we have the FE2 and 5B. It's gaining 5 meters of view range, 50 hit points, and its aiming time is getting slightly worse. So it's going to stay the same, which is fine with me. The 2 and 5B is an incredible vehicle currently, so I don't think it needs changes. The aiming time of the 4005 is getting worse, which is good. It's an autoloader, and it's a really dangerous autoloader, so that's fine with me. View range is getting worse. That's also fine with me. And the on-movement dispersion is getting better. So I think that all these changes are fine. I think the 4005 right now is in a really tricky spot to balance, and I think Wargaming did a decent job with it. They didn't really change much, to be honest. The Badger is getting another top speed increase. It's going to go 36 now, which is kind of crazy. Terrain crossing capacity, it's going to go way better on hard terrain. It's going to stay the same on medium and basically the same on soft. The traverse speed is getting a massive nerf, though. And I think that's good. I think the traverse speed of the Badger really allowed it to get away with a lot more than it should. So the big nerf to traverse is good. And the view range nerf is fine, whatever. It's a frontline TD. In general, it's getting a big buff to straight line speed, but a nerf to, turning. And that's fine. I don't think the Badger deserves the traverse speed it features, so it'll still be a really good vehicle. Also, with the nerf to traverse speed, it's going to make the vehicle bloom less when turning, so it might actually help it out in some situations. The FE2 and 5B 183 is losing shell velocity. Its aiming time is getting about a second worse, but it's gaining base dispersion, which means if you're running refined gun, the 183 is going to have 0.34 dispersion. So even though it looks like it's getting nerfed, you have to remember, if you're sitting still at the back of the map, like most 183 players do, you're going to be able to hit some really stupid shots. Personally, I don't agree with the buffing of its dispersion. I would have just nerfed the aiming time, nerfed the shell velocity, and left the dispersion the way it was. But, oh well, we'll have to see what exactly the 183 plays like when it's changed. The T-25 Pilot 1 is going to have a lot of hit points, 1390. Its power to weight is getting a big buff, and its reload time is getting slightly better. It's a mediocre tier 8 that not many people care about, and it will still be a mediocre tier 8 that not many people care about after the changes, so I could care less. M48 Patton, reactive armor is being added, gear oil is being added, and all of that only for a slight DPM nerf. The armor on the M48 is still going to be ridiculously good. Reactive armor is going to allow it to be stupid strong. Yeah, the Patton is going to be a beast. It already is a beast, so these changes are going to allow it to get away with really whatever it wants, which is a little stupid if you ask me. Either way, it's going to be crazy. The E6, power to weight, quite a big nerf. The traverse speed is getting a big buff, and this is the huge buff. The hatch is going from 220 to 248. The E6 hatch is at a weird, funky angle. It's kind of like this. And because of that, if you turn the hatch to the left or to the right, especially with that buff to the armor, it actually will get a lot of bounces. People are going to start bouncing this hatch a lot, especially tier 9s. The armor is actually going to be quite effective. I'm really excited to see how it plays. I'm disappointed they're nerfing the power to weight, but it's not a huge nerf. It's 2, but it is still disappointing, but we'll have to see what happens. I think the E6 will still be an absolute beast, especially with that armor buff. The M6O is getting some big nerfs. The 120mm is losing about a second of aiming time. The 105mm is also losing a second of aiming time. The power to weight ratio is getting slightly better, which doesn't matter. Top speed's getting a big buff, though. It's going from 35 to 38, and this tank already has a really good power to weight, so it's going to be actually quite nice with that increased top speed. Its armor on the upper plate's getting worse, going from 175 to 160, which means that AP ammo will probably be able to cut through your upper plate quite easily now. I know for a fact that heat buttered through the Yo upper plate, so I have a feeling, unless you're using gun depression, that upper plate's going to be rather mediocre. But this is a hull down heavy after all, and with the auto-loading gun, it's still going to be really dangerous. Plus, it's not losing reticle calibration, so in general, I don't think there's much to worry about in terms of the M6O and the changes occurring to it. The T110E3 is losing traverse speed, which is going to suck. It already has awful traverse speed, so the fact it's losing more, I don't agree with that personally. The view range is getting 10 meters more. The aiming time is getting slightly worse, its reload time is getting slightly better, and the penetration of its premium ammo, oh boy, getting a 5mm buff. Overall, this is a big nerf to the E3. I mean, sure, it's getting more DPM, it's getting more pen, but that doesn't matter when Wargaming's taking away 5 or 4 degrees of its traverse speed. It needs that traverse. Anybody that drives the E3 knows how bad it turns. It's bad, and this is going to really hinder its capabilities. If anything, I think it should have stayed the same on its traverse, maybe even gotten buffed. It needed a reverse speed buff as well. Personally, I do not agree with the E3 changes. I think that's going to make the tank really unenjoyable. The XM66F aiming time is getting no change. The tank is going from AP standard to APCR. We love APCR standard, and the reload time is going from 7.86 to 7.67. So they're buffing its DPM, and they're giving it APCR standard. So really, they're making it stronger, if you think about it. I mean, sure, the APCR standard sucks and all, but the fact that it's gaining more DPM and it already features some of the highest DPM in the game is kind of crazy. So yeah, the XM's just going to be crazy good. Concept 1B, reload time is going from 8.63 to 8.44, so it's getting more DPM, and the on-movement dispersion is getting slightly worse. Overall, this is a buff, because the Concept is just going to be able to hold even better. It's going to have over 3,000 effective DPM now, so it's going to be really, really good. Sheridan, it's going from 230 to 235 pen on the standard. It's APCR though, so it's not that big of a buff. Its top speed's going up by 2, who cares? The damage per shot's going up by 10, who cares? The on-movement dispersion's getting nerfed. This will affect the vehicle. Right now, the Sheridan is some of the best on-movement dispersion in Tier 10 for what it is. And the fact that it's getting nerfed is good. I think that it should take longer to aim in. That's good. Its power to weight is also getting slightly worse, so overall, Sheridan's getting some buffs and some nerfs, and I think that these are all well adjusted, and yeah, no complaints there. We have the T-57 Heavy, which is getting more traverse speed. Its aiming time is getting worse, which is good. I think the aiming time's too quick on the 57 Heavy, and its traverse speed is getting 1 better, and its top speed's getting 2 better. So it's getting some buffs, and it's getting some nerfs, and I think that's good. I personally think the 57 Heavy aims in too quick for the fact that with shell reload boost, it's able to deal a whopping 1200 damage in 3.5 seconds. That's stupid. The power to weight of the E4 is staying the same. Traverse speed is getting 2 degrees worse. The view range is getting worse. The aiming time is getting better, and it's getting sandbags. Essentially, the E4 is getting better. Its DPM staying the same, and it's getting better aiming time and sandbags. This thing's going to be insane. The E4, I already made my video like a month ago saying that it's literally just one of the best tanks in the game. And the fact that they're giving it sandbags and everything else, what the frick? This tank is going to be ridiculous. So yeah, I would highly recommend to start grinding the E4 if you don't already have it, because it's going to be insane. And we arrive to the final vehicle, the M60, which is receiving improved engine power boost, sandbags, reload time is getting slightly worse, and its shell speed is getting worse. Personally, I don't agree with these changes. The M60 should not have gotten nerfed on its DPM, nor should it have gotten nerfed on its shell speed. This vehicle does not have the same armor that the M48 Patton does. And while it is getting sandbags, which the Patton isn't, it's still a little goofy that they're not buffing the turret armor or giving it some sort of advantage over the Patton. Right now, that's kind of, So, yeah, I don't really care too much about the M60 changes. I mean, the tank will still be fine. It's a solid vehicle as it is, so I'm not going to sit here and act like it's going to be the worst thing ever, but it is a bit disappointing that they aren't doing anything crazy to the M60. Overall, from my original video talking about how awful the balance changes were, I think Wargaming has done a good job reversing a lot of them, changing them in a way that is much more balanced. So good job to Wargaming. I'm actually quite pleased with these changes, and I think that most of them are actually going to be quite fun. So there you have it. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Let me know if you agree or disagree with some of my opinions, and as always, if you're not subscribed, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. Bye-bye!